You pathetic, washed-up old woman. Just walking next to you embarrasses me. And don't you ever dare talk back to me as long as you're living on my dime." Those cruel words made the air in the living room feel like it had frozen over. On the table, a bowl of homemade beef stew that had grown cold sat untouched, and across from it, my husband, Robert, stared at me with a mocking sneer. However, from his crisply ironed dress shirt emanated a scent that wasn't mine. A sharp, sickeningly sweet, cheap perfume. He never doubted for a second that I was just a useless wife who could only endure everything in silence. But at that moment, my husband Robert had absolutely no idea that in just a few short hours, the wife he had insulted for so long would drag him down into the worst hell of his life. Throughout our 25 years of marriage, I, Amelia or Amy, as I'm called now 52, had never once talked back to my husband. Without a single complaint, I dedicated my life to keeping our home intact. Single-handedly, I bore the burden of caring for his demanding, attention-seeking parents until I laid them to rest a few years ago. I thought we would finally enjoy a quiet and peaceful retirement together. But the attitude of my 4-year-old husband drastically changed 3 years ago when he was promoted to the board of directors at his corporate firm. "Hey, Amy, your ironing is sloppy. How am I supposed to show up at the board meeting with a collar this wrinkled?" "I'm sorry, honey. I'll press it again right now. Incompetent." "What do you even do at home all day? Just breathing and eating off the money I make. Maybe you should try ironing those wrinkles on your face instead." Every day, insults like that rained down on me, and all I could do was bow my head and wait for the storm to pass. He was a typical verbal abuser who constantly degraded the wife he had lived with for decades, always asking, "Who puts food on the table?" But my heart had long since detached from my husband. The sadness and heartache had completely vanished 6 months ago. One night, while my husband was in the shower, his phone, left on the living room coffee table, buzzed briefly. Normally, I never snooped through other people's phones, but that time, as if pushed by an unseen force, I glanced at the screen. "Robert, I'll be waiting at our suite tonight. Can't wait to see you." The message flashed on the screen. The sender's name was Lauren. Seeing that name, I felt the blood drain from my face. No, it wasn't anger or sadness. A strange, cold calmness enveloped me from head to toe. Ah, so that's how it is. Lately, my husband had started wearing trendy clothes meant for younger men and even started wearing cologne. On weekends, he left the house more frequently under the guise of golf games or business meetings. The signs of infidelity were too obvious, but it wasn't the affair itself that shocked me. A few days later, with the help of a friend, I went to a high-end cafe in Tribeca, Manhattan, where my husband had a meeting. With a hat pulled down low so I wouldn't be recognized, I observed them from a distant booth. Sitting across from my husband was a young woman, laughing flirtatiously with a high-pitched voice. Her makeup was heavy, and her dress was revealing, highlighting every curve of her body. When she turned her head and I could clearly see her face, I couldn't believe my eyes. It couldn't be. Is that Lauren? 35 years old. Her face was very familiar to me. She was the daughter-in-law of my instructor at the Heritage Fine Arts Guild, where I took classical oil painting classes once a week. Eleanor DuPont, strict, flawless, and the very embodiment of American old money and high society. Lauren was the wife of her only son, marrying into the prestigious DuPont family, yet having an affair with my husband behind everyone's back. Additionally, the DuPont family was one of the most influential legacy families in the city. Her mother-in-law, Eleanor DuPont, was known as a fiercely strict matriarch who valued the family's reputation and her daughter-in-law's dignity above all else. My husband Robert, as a top executive, should have known about the DuPont family through his corporate dealings. And despite all that, he was involved with their daughter-in-law. Seeing his sheer stupidity, my anger vanished, and I could only laugh cynically. "Robert, I want to divorce my boring husband and live with you." "Me too, Lauren, baby. My idiot wife will leave quietly if I throw her a little settlement money." "You're young and beautiful. You're exactly what I need." In the quiet hum of the cafe, their absurd conversation was crystal clear. My husband, calling me his idiot wife, smirked with a vulgar, satisfied smile I had never seen before. From that day on, I stopped crying and screaming. I just started gathering evidence silently and with a cool head. Clear photos of them entering and leaving hotels, pictures of them embracing at restaurants, and copies of their countless affectionate texts. Additionally, I checked my husband's credit card statements and found out exactly which luxury hotels they frequented, down to their favorite suite number. And today, that fateful Friday had arrived. Hey, Amy, I have an important business dinner tonight, so I'll be home late. Might just crash at a hotel. Don't bother making dinner for me, my husband said, putting on his expensive leather shoes in the foyer and fixing his hair in the mirror. He didn't look like a man going to work at all. He was so giddy he looked like he might burst into song. Okay, honey, good luck with work. Drive safely. I sent him off with the perfect smile of an obedient, virtuous wife. The front door closed. Once I was sure the sound of his footsteps had completely faded, the smile on my face vanished. The clock showed 7:30 p.m. I picked up my phone and opened the contact list I had prepared. There were the numbers of my older brothers and my strict art instructor, Eleanor DuPont. All right, let the show begin. I just had to wait for confirmation that my husband and Lauren had entered their usual hotel. I sipped my cold tea and waited calmly. Just imagining the look on their faces in a few hours made my heart race. When the grandfather clock chimed 8 times in the silent living room, my phone buzzed. A message from the private investigator I hired months ago popped up. Targets have arrived at the Grand Royale Hotel in Manhattan, currently entering penthouse suite 1204 on the top floor. There was no mistake. The text came with a clear photo taken in a dimly lit underground parking garage. My husband and Lauren were hugging, pressed intimately against each other. Lauren was wearing a bright red dress, flirting and resting her head on his shoulder. It begins, I whispered into the void, staring at the cold screen and exhaling softly. There was no more sorrow. There was only a calm determination to put an end to the version of myself who had done nothing but endure. I immediately dialed one of the numbers I had saved. After a few rings, a deep, composed woman's voice answered. Yes, Eleanor speaking. Mrs. DuPont, I apologize for bothering you at this late hour. It's Amy, your student from the Arts Guild. Eleanor DuPont, the head of an aristocratic family respected throughout the East Coast, a woman who held honor and reputation above everything. Amy, why are you calling so late? Is it urgent? Yes, ma'am. I feel terrible bringing this up, but there is something I must tell you immediately. That is why I'm calling. I deliberately lowered my voice, keeping my tone flat but clear. Your daughter-in-law, Lauren, just checked into a hotel in Manhattan with my husband. A stifled gasp echoed from the other end. A heavy, agonizing silence lasted for several seconds. Then, I heard Eleanor's voice, low and bone-chilling. Amy, are you certain of this information? Yes, ma'am. I have photographic proof and their room number. They are at the Grand Royale Hotel, room 1204, right now. A terrifying silence fell again, but her next words were even colder and more furious than I could have imagined. A daughter-in-law of the DuPont family in a hotel with another woman's husband. Amy, I thank you for this news. I am heading to that hotel immediately. I will never forgive that foolish girl for dragging the DuPont name through the mud. I'll be waiting for you, ma'am. I am already on my way. After hanging up, I sent a brief text to my 2 older brothers. The hotel we talked about, room 1204, execute the plan. My brothers were already waiting near the hotel, my trusted backup. I opened my closet and put on, not the simple house dresses my husband always mocked, but an elegant, perfectly tailored navy blue designer dress. This was my battle armor. 9:00 p.m. The lobby of the Grand Royale Hotel glittered with crystal chandeliers. When I arrived, my 2 broad-shouldered brothers were already waiting with their arms crossed. Amy, you've been so strong handling all this alone. Leave the rest to us, my eldest brother, William, said. I simply gave a short nod at his comforting words. Just then, the hotel's automatic doors slid open, and a figure appeared who seemed to alter the entire atmosphere around her. It was Eleanor DuPont. Dressed impeccably in an expensive, formal suit, there wasn't a single trace of emotion on her face. Her expression was as cold as a mask. Behind her, standing with his head bowed, was Lauren's pale husband, Theodore. Amy. Mrs. DuPont. Theodore, I am so sorry it has come to this. I bowed deeply, but Eleanor stopped me with a gesture. You have nothing to apologize for. The only guilty ones are those 2 shameless fools. Come, let us go. I will cleanse my family's disgrace with my own hands. We stepped into the elevator in silence. The floor numbers changed, The cabin ascended wordlessly. Inside that cramped space, the atmosphere was suffocating and tense, signaling the coming storm. With a soft ding, the doors on the 12th floor opened. We walked silently down the long, plush-carpeted hallway. At the end stood a heavy wooden door. On its brass plaque, the numbers 1204 glowed dimly. Behind that door, my husband and Lauren were probably sipping expensive wine, laughing at me and Theodore, swearing eternal love to each other. I took a soft breath and reached my ice-cold hand out to the electronic doorbell. All right. The time for dreaming is over. From now on, you will walk the path to your own personal hell. The electronic chime shattered the silence of the hallway. I pulled my finger back and exhaled slowly. Behind me, holding their breath, stood my brothers, Eleanor and Theodore. Yeah, who is it? Room service took their sweet time, came my husband's drunken, annoyed voice from behind the door. The sound of slippers shuffling against the carpet, then the deadbolt clicking. The door opened slowly, and from the crack wafted a nauseating mix of sweet perfume and the sharp tang of expensive wine. Hey, I asked for extra wine. Robert, my husband, froze in the doorway. His hand still gripped the handle. He was wearing nothing but a white terry cloth hotel bathrobe, carelessly left open at the chest, his face flushed from the wine. His unfocused gaze slowly found my face. For a few seconds, he didn't seem to process who was standing in front of him. He blinked, his mouth slightly ajar, staring at me. Finally, his confusion morphed into seething anger. Amy? You bitch. What the hell are you doing here? His yell echoed down the empty corridor. He tried to slam the door, but my brother William swiftly wedged the toe of his dress shoe into the gap and shoved the door wide open. Hey! Who the hell are you guys? Thugs? I'm calling the cops right now. We aren't thugs. I'm Amy's brother. It looks like you've been taking great care of my little sister, William said coldly, glaring daggers at him. My husband took a step back. But, seemingly remembering his status as a corporate board member, he puffed out his chest again and pointed at me. Amy, are you stalking me? You disgusting stalker? Disgusting? Robert yelled, spitting as he spoke. I showed no emotion, merely staring at his pathetic figure in silence. Why are you quiet? Say something. Listen here, you useless, worthless woman. I stopped loving you a long time ago, having to look at your wrinkled, unkempt face every day. You're just a parasite living off my money. What right do you have to interfere in my private life? A barrage of insults. The old me might have sobbed uncontrollably, but now, his words sounded like nothing more than the pathetic barking of a beaten dog. My silence seemed to infuriate him further. He kept yelling, his face turning beet red. Right then, a whiny voice drifted from inside the room. Robert, what's wrong? Is it not room service? Lauren stepped into the entryway. She was wearing only a sheer silk slip. In her hand, she held a half-empty glass of red wine. Realizing the strange atmosphere at the door, Lauren stopped. Her eyes met mine, and she froze in her tracks. Robert's wife. She apparently remembered that I was a student at the Arts Guild. Her eyes darted around nervously, but her cunning was slightly above what I expected. Lauren set her glass on the console table and suddenly, with teary eyes, clung to my husband's arm. Robert, I'm scared. Your wife is stalking us. This is terrifying. It's an invasion of privacy. I'm scared she's going to do something to me. Faced with a young woman seeking his protection, my husband's ego inflated massively. He stood in front of her as if shielding her and looked at me with the exact look he used for trash. Do you hear that, Amy? You're terrifying, Lauren. Look at her. Unlike you old, haggard, and completely unattractive, Lauren is young and respects me. You lost your appeal as a woman a long time ago. I still didn't answer. I just took a deep, slow breath. Hey, are you deaf? Whatever, I've had enough. We're done. We're getting a divorce. I'll throw you some settlement money, so pack your bags and get the hell out of my house tomorrow. Right as my husband triumphantly delivered those words, from behind me, out of the shadows of the dimly lit hotel corridor, emerged a figure who had previously concealed her presence. Stepping forward silently, yet with undeniable authority. What a bold and generous settlement offer. A low, cold, commanding woman's voice. As those words rang out, Lauren's body, pressed against my husband's arm, violently flinched. Lauren stared past me with eyes full of absolute, bottomless horror. Standing there, draped in an expensive tailored suit, was her mother-in-law, Eleanor DuPont, her steel eyes flashing like a goddess of wrath. Eleanor. Why? The blood instantly drained from Lauren's face. Her hands and feet trembled. She looked like she was about to pass out right then and there. But the gates of hell had only just begun to open. From behind Eleanor emerged one more figure. A pale-faced man. His designer suit sat perfectly on him, but it was clear this usually calm man was fighting to contain the boiling rage inside him. It was Lauren's husband, Theodore. Lauren, didn't you say you had an important career development seminar today and would be home late? Theodore's low, trembling voice echoed in the hallway. At that moment, the glass slipped from Lauren's hand, and the red wine spilled across the thick hotel carpet like fresh blood. Ah. Theodore, no, it's not what you think. This is. Lauren backed up until her spine hit the wall. Her teeth were audibly chattering. The entryway to the luxury suite had instantly turned into the gates of hell. But there was one truly foolish person who had no idea what was happening. My husband, Robert. Alcohol and the desire to prove his masculinity in front of his young mistress had completely paralyzed his ability to think rationally. And who the hell are you? Lauren's friends? The nerve! Coming to my door and lecturing me. Robert glared at Theodore with bloodshot eyes, then shifted his gaze to Eleanor and my brothers standing behind her. Then he let out a low, vulgar laugh full of contempt. Ha, what is this, Amy? You brought all your poor relatives? Thinking that if you gang up on me, you can extort a bigger settlement out of me? God, you are so pathetic and money-hungry. I didn't say a word, just stared silently at my husband's face. My brothers, ready to pounce on him while yelling, "You bastard," were stopped by a flick of my wrist. Right now, we didn't need to make a scene or argue. This pathetic man needed to be allowed to talk as much as he wanted, so he could dig his own grave so deep the bottom couldn't be seen. Robert took my silence as fear, and grew even bolder. Actually, I won't pay a single dime to a useless parasite like you. While you're lazing around the house all day, I bleed for this company to get to where I am. I am so sick of drinking that cheap coffee you make, that tastes like dishwater. Dishwater coffee, huh? He didn't even know that for years, I had been studying at an exclusive fine arts guild, even earning the title of master painter. This was proof that he had never, not once, taken an interest in the hobbies of the wife who had supported him her whole life. Beside the spitting Robert, Lauren covered her face in horror and screamed, "Stop it, please, shut up." But Robert assumed Lauren was just terrified of these savages and arrogantly wrapped an arm around her bare shoulder. "Don't be scared, Lauren baby. I'll kick these bums out right now. And you," he pointed at Eleanor, "you tacky old lady." At that, Theodore's face turned even paler. Even my brothers gasped. "Hey, what did you just say? What is that? What kind of outdated outfit is that? Trying to look respectable? Gather as many of you uneducated lowlifes as you want, I don't care. Just so you know, I'm a board member of a major corporation. I deal with real upper-class people every day. For example, with the famous DuPont family of this city." Robert puffed his chest out and declared with immense pride, "The DuPont family is old money. They live in a different world, not like you people living paycheck to paycheck." I rubbed shoulders with the top executives of the DuPont group. If I wanted to, one phone call from me would be enough to wipe you off the face of the earth. The corridor fell dead silent. It was so ridiculous I could barely hold back a laugh. The impeccably dressed woman standing right in front of him, whose name he was using to intimidate us, was the absolute ruler of the DuPont family herself, Eleanor DuPont. But Robert, who perhaps knew the faces of the DuPont Group's corporate directors, had never actually met the matriarch, who rarely appeared in public. In the tense silence, for the first time, a smile appeared on Eleanor's mask-like face. But it wasn't a friendly smile. It was the predatory smirk of a wild beast right before it sinks its fangs into its prey's neck. "Oh?" Eleanor's low, commanding voice echoed softly in the hotel hallway. "You seem to be very proud of your acquaintance with the DuPont family, aren't you?" From that unusual tone, Robert was momentarily confused and fell silent. One more step, and his cheap pride, his career, everything he had built would shatter to pieces. The countdown to his destruction was nearing zero. "You seem to be very proud of your acquaintance with the DuPont family, aren't you?" Eleanor's question was ice-cold and laced with hidden threats. Anyone in their right mind would understand the gravity of the situation just from her tone. But Robert, his brain clouded by alcohol and arrogance, just scoffed dismissively. Of course. I have dinner with the leadership of the DuPont Group all the time. Without their heavy backing, my projects wouldn't even get off the ground. It's a world you bums will never be able to enter. Robert was absolutely convinced that hiding behind his corporate title and the DuPont name would bring everyone present to their knees. He glared at me with hatred and stepped forward. Amy, where did you dig up these geezers and bodyguards? Did you think you could pull some cheap stunt to extort money out of me? Don't make me laugh. I stood leaning against the wall, staring into Robert's bloodshot eyes. He took my silence as an admission of defeat, and his insults grew more vicious. You're always like this. When I come home exhausted from work, you can't even say one nice word. Just a stupid woman who only knows how to dust shelves and hunt for coupons. If it weren't for me providing for you, you wouldn't even be able to buy groceries tomorrow. You useless parasite. Down the hall, his unjust, cruel insults echoed. How much mental and physical strength had I sacrificed to care for his difficult parents? How had I pinched pennies and maintained the home so he could peacefully build his career? In his eyes, 25 years of my life was just the laziness of a worthless parasite. Listen to me, Amy. I will never forgive you. You are going to pay dearly for this stunt. Not only will I not give you a single red cent, but I'll sue you for defamation and trying to ruin my business reputation. I'll hire the best lawyers and turn you into a penniless vagrant. Robert was trying to utterly destroy me. The old me might have been terrified by his threats and talk of lawyers, broken down crying, and started begging for forgiveness. I'm sorry, this is all my fault. I'll take the blame. Robert waited for me to fall to my knees and beg for mercy, as usual. On his lips sat the vile smile of an oppressor breaking the weak. But I stood motionless. My composure only made him angrier. What the hell is that look? You still think you've won? Hey, Lauren, tell this idiot. Tell her how much better you are than her and how much more you deserve me. Robert roughly shoved Lauren's trembling shoulder beside him. Ouch! Lauren yelped and stumbled away from him, pressing against the wall. What's wrong, Lauren? Baby, don't be scared. I told you I'd protect you. These bums can be crushed with a snap of my fingers using the DuPont family's power. Stop it, just stop. Lauren finally covered her ears, crouched down, and started sobbing. Her gaze was fixed not on Robert, but on Eleanor and Theodore standing behind him. Out of sheer terror, her beautiful face crumpled, her makeup running with tears and snot. Oh, did you guys scare her that much? Poor thing. Robert, completely misunderstanding the situation, turned back to us. Look, thanks to you, Lauren is terrified. If you don't stop threatening my woman, I'm calling the cops right now. Or maybe I should just call the head of the DuPont group right now, Mrs. Eleanor DuPont herself, and ask her to take out the trash. When Robert played what he thought was his trump card, loudly invoking Eleanor's name, my brother William, who had been suppressing his rage, couldn't hold it in anymore and burst into roaring laughter. Even my younger brother and Lauren's husband, Theodore, were momentarily stunned by the sheer absurdity of it. What? Why are you laughing? He had no idea why he was being laughed at, and his face flushed with anger. And at that exact moment, to this hopelessly, truly foolish man, a voice low but capable of making the entire hallway vibrate, full of absolute authority, spoke out. Eleanor slowly approached Robert. You wish to call me? To ask me to take out the trash? Yeah, of course. I know Mrs. DuPont's face, and I have her private number. Robert tried to bluff, but Eleanor cut him off with a sentence made of ice. Do not lie. You do not know my face. What do you mean? Eleanor, her face a stone mask, looked straight into Robert's eyes and spoke the words that demolished his pathetic world down to its foundations. The person you just called a tacky old lady and threatened to have taken out. That is me. Eleanor DuPont. Are you going to continue this nonsense? Eleanor. DuPont? The DuPonts? A stupid, confused sound escaped Robert's lips. His eyes widened, darting back and forth between the formally dressed woman and Lauren, who was cowering beside her. After a few blank seconds, he forced a laugh. Ha ha ha, nice joke, Amy. Did you hire this old lady to play the head of the DuPonts just to scare me? Drop the act. Shut your mouth. Theodore's shout hit like thunder. Theodore, usually so calm, veins popping in his temples, grabbed Robert by the collar. I will not let you insult my mother and the DuPont family any further. I am Theodore DuPont, executive director of the DuPont Group. And this is my mother, And the chairwoman of the board, Eleanor DuPont. Trash like you has no right to speak her name. Theodore's furious appearance. The business card of a top DuPont Group executive shoved into Robert's face. And most importantly, the sight of Lauren collapsed on the floor, weeping. Mother, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. All of it finally slapped Robert with the brutal reality. The real? I watched the blood drain from Robert's face. His red face turned as white as a ghost. Theodore shoved him, and he landed hard on his rear, staring at Eleanor with eyes wide in disbelief. Mrs. DuPont? How? Why are you here? And why are you with Amy? In a panic, Robert tried to salvage his position, once again making me the target of his attack. I understand, Mrs. DuPont. You were tricked by this woman, Amy. She's a useless housewife who doesn't earn a single cent and lives as a parasite off my money. She must have approached you with some sinister motive. Open your eyes. I looked down at my husband, sprawling on the floor, shouting his pathetic defense. I stood tall, crossing my arms. This posture, forged by years of discipline in the art studio, would not be shaken by any insult. He apparently still thought I was quiet out of fear and an inability to talk back. Look, she can't even say anything. This woman won't survive without me. She's a pathetic parasite, Robert yelled triumphantly. A split second later, silence. Eleanor's ice-cold voice sliced through the air. Robert flinched and clamped his mouth shut. His lips merely twitched soundlessly. A parasite? A useless woman? How laughable. You lived with her for 25 years and still have no idea who your wife is. In Eleanor's voice, though her face remained expressionless, clear fury rang out. Amy is not just a housewife. At our Heritage Arts Guild, she is a master. My most trusted protege who guides hundreds of other students. Her education, her dignity, and her character. All of that makes her an invaluable person. The one the DuPont family trusts most. Master. Robert's eyes widened to their limits. No wonder. He thought I just tagged along to a casual drawing class once a week for fun. The coffee he once called dishwater and poured down the drain was a premium artisanal roast I procured just so he could relax after work. During the grueling years of caring for his parents, my painting was the only thing that kept me sane. My secret life, where through blood, sweat, and tears I earned the title of master. This man, up to this very day, had never even tried to find out. You called the person I trust implicitly a useless parasite, and you dragged the DuPont family's name through the mud by having an affair with my daughter-in-law. Do you understand what that means? Eleanor's words were a death sentence for Robert. The most terrifying and influential person, the one he should have feared and sucked up to, turned out to be the woman he insulted the most, his own wife. No. Amy? A master at the DuPont Guild? That's a lie. Robert scrambled backward, trembling. He finally realized he had stepped on a landmine that was about to detonate with inescapable consequences. But Eleanor's assault didn't stop there. She pulled a phone from her designer bag and fixed a frigid glare on Robert. You just boasted about how indispensable you are to your firm regarding your projects with the DuPont Group. Very well. Let's see if your company truly needs you that badly. Mrs. DuPont, wait. What are you doing? Who are you calling? Ignoring Robert's screams, Eleanor hit the dial button without hesitation. The ringing tone sounded cold in the silent hotel corridor. She was calling the big boss of Robert's company. From this moment on, the thrilling show where his pathetic pride and career would be smashed to pieces truly began. Yes, my deepest apologies for the late hour, Mrs. DuPont. This is Harrison. From the speakerphone, a sycophantic voice filled the quiet hall. It was undoubtedly the CEO of the firm where Robert worked, Mr. Harrison. That usually authoritative, arrogant voice was now quivering, betraying pure panic. Hearing it, Robert convulsed and slumped against the floor. Yes, I apologize for calling so late, Mr. Harrison. I will get straight to the point, Eleanor said, keeping it on speakerphone, her tone frigid. This concerns a board member at your firm named Robert. Our Robert? What about him? Has he angered you, ma'am? Angered is too light a word. At this very moment, he is in a suite at the Grand Royale Hotel, half naked, with my daughter-in-law. What? On the other end, Mr. Harrison sounded like the wind had been knocked out of him. A terrifying silence lasted for several seconds. Then, a deafening roar erupted from the speaker. What the hell is this? And that is not all. He publicly insulted his wife, Amy, who is deeply respected by the DuPont family and is a master artisan at our guild, by calling her a useless parasite. Additionally, he called me a tacky old lady and boasted that with the DuPont power, he could wipe out anyone he disliked. Ugh. A sound like a dying groan escaped Mr. Harrison's lips. The DuPont Group was his firm's largest client and its lifeblood. Crossing a DuPont family member and worse, insulting the matriarch meant inevitable bankruptcy. Mr. Harrison, it's not true. It's a misunderstanding. Robert crawled toward the phone, sobbing. I didn't know it was Mrs. DuPont. Amy brought these people here. Shut up, you filthy piece of trash. Mr. Harrison's roar from the speaker made Robert curl up and violently shake. Do you realize what you've done? Going against the DuPonts means our firm goes under tomorrow. You get a big head representing the company, and this is how you repay us? You ungrateful bastard. You're fired. As of tomorrow, you're terminated with cause. No, boss, wait. My contributions? Contributions? You only look good because of your talented subordinates and your wife supporting you from behind. What are you by yourself? You won't get a single cent of severance. On the contrary, we will sue you for the damages you've caused the company. After Mr. Harrison's furious barrage, the call disconnected. My job. Robert was completely dazed. His vacant eyes stared into nothingness. Just minutes ago, he was bragging that he put food on the table. And now, in a flash, he had lost his position and his income. I looked down at his pathetic state. No pity, no sympathy. This was the rightful punishment for someone who for decades hadn't treated me like a human being and had continuously subjected me to verbal abuse. Well, now you have no backing whatsoever. Eleanor put her phone away and shifted her icy gaze to Lauren, who was trembling by the wall. Lauren! You filthy stray cat who soiled the DuPont name. Now it's your turn. Mother. Please forgive me. Lauren dropped to her knees, pressing her forehead against the floor, her hands clasped in begging. I was tricked by Robert. He said his relationship with his wife was over, that he was definitely getting a divorce. He seduced me so persistently, I couldn't say no. I didn't even want to. The woman who just moments ago was coddling in her lover's arms now effortlessly threw him under the bus to save her own skin. Lauren, you! Robert stared at her in disbelief. What kind of bullshit are you saying? You're the one who came whining to me, complaining about how bored you were with your husband. You forced me to book expensive hotels and buy you designer bags. Liar, you forced me! In the hotel corridor, a man in a bathrobe and a woman in sheer lingerie screamed at each other, throwing blame back and forth. A truly pathetic, ugly end for two people who had just sworn their love. Disgusting, Theodore hissed. He looked at his wife with pure revulsion and spoke slowly. Lauren, if you want to be with Robert that badly, I will grant your wish. Huh? Lauren raised her tear-stained face, looking at her husband with desperate hope. Theodore pulled a thick envelope from his inside pocket and threw it at Lauren's feet. Seeing what it was, Lauren let out a shriek and collapsed. It was a piece of paper that marked the beginning of a hell far worse than Robert's firing. On the plush hotel carpet lay a familiar green-tinted form. Divorce papers. Lauren picked up the paper with trembling hands and looked up at Theodore in despair. His signature and a notary stamp were already clearly on it. Theodore, no. I don't want a divorce. I don't want to leave the DuPont family. Never. Whether you want to or not, I don't care. My signature is there. You will sign it right now. In Theodore's voice, there was no longer the warmth he once had for Lauren, only the cold contempt usually reserved for dirt. Lauren shook her head frantically. She didn't love Theodore, but the glittering status of being a DuPont daughter-in-law and the endless money she could spend losing all of that was akin to death to her. Mother, please stop Theodore. I was wrong. I'll be an obedient daughter-in-law. Lauren crawled toward Eleanor and grabbed the hem of her expensive suit, staining it with tears and snot. But Eleanor coldly swatted her hand away, as if flicking away an annoying insect. Do not touch me. You were never a daughter-in-law to the DuPont family. From the beginning, you never had the right to step foot in our home. Eleanor's words pierced Lauren's chest like jagged shards of ice. Besides, Lauren, your sin isn't just infidelity, Theodore added, his voice like frost. I looked into exactly how much money you siphoned from our joint accounts every month for beauty salons and luxury goods. All of that will be demanded back as embezzlement, and of course, compensation for emotional distress. See compensation? I don't have that kind of money. Don't tell me you can't pay. I already contacted your parents. Lauren froze. Your father, expressing deep regret for your actions, said he no longer recognizes you as his daughter and will pay all the compensation, even if he has to sell his house to do it. As of today, you are expelled not only from the DuPont family, but from your own family as well. Ah. Lauren's eyes rolled back, and she fainted. She had lost everything: her home, her money, her family. Only a hoarse, inhuman sound escaped her throat. Standing nearby with a bewildered look was Robert, a man who had lost everything and was currently in a state of shock. He saw with his own eyes that Lauren, whom he thought of as young, beautiful, and his ideal woman, was actually a greedy gold digger and was now a pathetic outcast disowned even by her own parents. Huh. What? Lauren? Baby, you got kicked out of the DuPonts and left without a dime? Robert let out a dry laugh and staggered to his feet. Then he turned to me with a crazed, manic smile. Amy. Hey, Amy, did you hear that? Lauren is a broke beggar rejected by everyone. I was just hypnotized by her. This is just a bad dream. I'm your husband. I got fired. Sure, but you're a master at the DuPont Guild. You can provide for me. How utterly shameless. The man who just called me a useless parasite and yelled at me to get out tomorrow was now begging me to provide for him. I looked at him slowly. No matter how much he insulted me, no matter how much he degraded me, I hadn't said a single word. I stayed silent so he would expose his own wretchedness. But I had to be the one to determine the finale of this show. I took a soft breath and finally unleashed the feelings I had buried in the depths of my heart for 25 years. Provide for you? My low but firm voice echoed softly in the hotel hallway. Robert, startled that I was speaking for the first time, froze. Robert, try to remember the words you've said to me. I took a step toward him. Who puts food on the table? You useless parasite. Your coffee is dishwater. For 25 years, you trampled on my dignity. And it wasn't just because of work stress. When I was taking care of your parents, you said they smelled awful and went to sleep in the guest room. When I collapsed from exhaustion, what did you say? You yelled, "What about my dinner?" Hearing my words, Robert's face shifted, and he backed up. I stopped loving you a long time ago. I endured this hellish life solely out of a sense of duty as a wife and to your parents. But today, all of that ends. I pulled something I had prepared from my bag. A thick manila envelope, much more intimidating than the one Theodore threw at Lauren. Woo! What? What is that? Robert's face twisted in terror. I casually tossed the envelope at his feet. This is my final gift to you. Read the contents carefully, and you'll understand just how deep the hell you're stepping into is. Robert picked up the envelope with trembling hands and pulled out a stack of papers. Seeing the heading on the first page, his eyes bulged, and a pathetic shriek escaped his lips. What is this? 5 million? Damages? $5 million? Robert's trembling voice bounced off the silent walls. In his hands was a document I had spent the last 6 months preparing. A lawsuit for damages and division of assets. It detailed compensation for emotional distress resulting from the divorce, years of systematic verbal abuse, him shifting all the burden of caring for his parents onto me, and the proposed division of our joint assets. What kind of bullshit is this? 5 million? I can't pay that kind of money. I just got fired. Are you trying to bankrupt me? Robert, pale as a ghost, tried to lunge at me, ready to tear the documents. But my brothers stepped in to block him. Don't come any closer. Read the next page. It has a log of every ounce of poison you spat at Amy. At my eldest brother's urging, Robert turned the page with shaking hands. Listed there were the dates, times, locations, and exact quotes of his insults. Parasite, useless, dishwater. Being near you makes the food taste bad. There were even notes about how he snored next to me while I tended to his dying father in the middle of the night, and how he screamed at me over a dirty shirt while I was bedridden with a high fever. You wrote all this down? Huge beads of sweat dripped from Robert's forehead onto the carpet. Yes, and not just a diary. Look at the bottom of the envelope. There should be a flash drive. When I said that, Robert pulled out a small black thumb drive. Recorded on there are hundreds of hours of your insults toward me. My lawyers confirmed that such clear, systematic evidence of verbal and emotional abuse is rare, In court, you will lose, 100%. Ah. Robert's knees buckled. Robert, you always said to me, who puts food on the table? But actually, it was the exact opposite. The house we live in was bought with my inheritance, and the substantial funds invested to get you that promotion came from my family. Without that, you never would have reached the position you did. You forgot about your personal debts that I quietly paid off using my family's money. Yes, 10 years ago, Robert fell into massive debt due to failed investments. At the time, I used my trust fund and help from my family to pay it all off secretly. He thought he just got lucky. And no, Amy, that's not true. I didn't know anything. You just didn't want to know. You only ever cared about your own pride and never looked at me as a human being. That's why you never realized how fragile the foundation you were standing on actually was. Robert finally realized that everything he called success was built using me as a stepping stone. Please, Amy. 5 million is impossible. Please. I'm sorry. I agree to the divorce, but please lower the amount. I'll be homeless. Where did all his arrogance go? Robert fell to his knees and wrapped his arms around my legs, sobbing. But there was one more figure coldly watching this ugly scene. There will be no negotiations, Eleanor said, slowly but surely delivering the killing blow. Amy, there is no need to show mercy to this man. The DuPont family fully intends to exile him socially as well. Do not think you can walk away just by losing money after dragging the DuPont name through the dirt. Hearing Eleanor's words, Robert's eyes rolled back, and he nearly fainted. He had lost his job, his money, and was now the enemy of the absolute rulers of high society in the city. There was no safe place left for him in this country. Ah. Save me, please, Robert's screams echoed in the hotel corridor. But at that moment, from the suite at the very end of the hall, a figure appeared, and the atmosphere shifted yet again. Oh, what is all this commotion about out here? A voice rang out, incredibly serene and elegant for the situation. All eyes turned to the end of the hall. Standing there, escorted by hotel management, was an elderly woman. Seeing her, Eleanor for the first time all night widened her eyes in shock. Your Grace. It couldn't be. The situation was rapidly spiraling into an entirely unexpected direction. What is all this commotion? My quiet evening has been disturbed. The voice from down the hall was as melodic as a silver bell, yet underneath it lay a steely tone that tolerated zero compromises. Every eye was glued to her. Accompanied by assistants, an elegant elderly woman with perfectly styled silver hair approached us, wearing an expensive yet understated tailored suit. As she appeared, Eleanor DuPont, who had previously been as cold and immovable as a goddess of wrath, caught her breath and bowed impossibly low, with deep reverence. Madam Victoria, why are you in a place like this? Eleanor's voice trembled slightly. The DuPont family was undeniably respected across the East Coast, and Eleanor held immense power, but right now, she was acting like a humble servant. Madam, whose grandmother is that? Mumbled Robert, still sprawled on the floor. Before he could finish his sentence, Eleanor's son Theodore, his face taut with tension, grabbed Robert by the collar. Shut your mouth! That woman is the matriarch of the Sterling family, Victoria Vanderbilt Sterling, the absolute pinnacle of American high society. For the DuPont family, she was akin to royalty, the head of the Sterling financial empire. Robert's face turned another shade paler. His corporate firm and its clients were nothing compared to this titan of Wall Street. True American aristocracy. Victoria Sterling gave a regal nod in response to Eleanor's greeting, then slowly swept her gaze over everyone gathered. A half-naked man, a weeping woman, furious relatives faced with this ugly scene. Her eyes remained clear and undisturbed, and her gaze stopped on me, on Amy. It has been a long time, Amy. Or perhaps, should I call you Amelia Vanderbilt Sterling? I bowed slowly. Good evening, grandmother. Grandmother? The loudest scream of the entire night ripped through the hallway. Robert's eyes practically bulged out of their sockets, and Eleanor was so shocked she nearly fell to her knees. Amy, what did you just say? Grandmother? The head of the Sterling Empire is your grandmother? Robert shrieked, scratching at his own throat. Victoria Sterling, completely ignoring Robert, looked at me with deep affection. Eleanor, I know you are one of my former protégés. but I did not expect you to involve the sole granddaughter and heiress of the Sterling family, Amelia, in this unpleasant situation. It seems the discipline within the DuPont family has become far too lax. Forgive me, Madam Victoria. I had absolutely no idea Amy was your granddaughter. Eleanor, breaking out in a cold sweat, apologized profusely, practically bowing to the floor. Yes, this was my deepest secret. I was born into the Sterling family, at the very apex of American high society. But in my youth, I didn't want to live confined by strict, suffocating traditions. Hiding my origins, I decided to live as an ordinary woman. That was when I met Robert, an average corporate employee at the time. He knew nothing of my background. He just liked a simple, homebody girl and proposed to me. I believed that a quiet, simple life with him was the happiness I was looking for. Therefore, for 25 years of marriage, I never once brought up my family. Even when Robert laughed, dumped out the coffee I brewed, and called it dishwater, I endured it, thinking this was my own choice. But it was this very silence that made him so arrogant, turning me, in his eyes, into a useless old woman who could be replaced at any time. Robert. I looked straight into the eyes of my husband, who was slumped on the floor. The family you insulted all this time, my brothers whom you called poor relatives, they are influential figures holding massive power in both Wall Street and Washington, the main pillars of the Sterling family. And this woman, I gestured to my grandmother, whom you called a tacky old lady, is someone you could try your entire life to meet and never get past her lobby security. Only incoherent noises escaped Robert's mouth. His mistress's mother-in-law was his wife's student, and his wife was the heiress to a dynasty that stood above them all. From this absurd reality, Robert's mind finally snapped, and foaming slightly at the mouth, he slumped over. But Victoria Sterling's strikes were not over. She fixed a frigid gaze on Lauren, trembling in the corner. And you, young lady, did you really think that by stealing the husband of my granddaughter and trying to degrade her, you would get off with merely being kicked out of the little birdcage known as the DuPont family? The Sterling family repays kindness with kindness, but we repay malice 1,000-fold. Lauren, under such crushing pressure, couldn't even scream. She just shook violently, wetting herself right where she stood. Very well, Amelia. Let us leave this vile place. Your 5-year game of playing house is over. A much larger world awaits you. My grandmother held out her pale, aristocratic hand, and I slowly but firmly took it. Robert, lying on the floor, desperately tried to grab my ankle. Wait, Amy. I was wrong. It was all just a stupid joke. I love you. I love you, Amy. I mercilessly kicked his hand away. The despair of 25 years that had piled up in my soul had turned into a block of ice, forever separating him from me. But at that moment, no one knew that Robert still held one final horrifying secret. Amy, Amy, don't go. Don't leave me. In the cold hotel corridor, Robert discarded all his dignity, crawling desperately trying to grab my ankle. There was not a single trace left of the top executive who used to scream at subordinates and call me a parasite at home. Let go. You're disgusting, I said with an icy tone, and Robert froze. But in his eyes burned a dark obsession and a wicked desire to save himself by any means necessary. Don't be like this. We've been married for 25 years. You'll be lonely without me. And that house. I paid half the mortgage. I have the right to live there. The mortgage? My younger brother, standing behind me, scoffed dismissively. Hey, Robert, what did you just say? Paid the mortgage? That house was built on land Amy inherited from our grandfather, and our father paid for the construction in cash. You didn't contribute a single dime. But the utility bills, the groceries, I provided for the family with my money. Robert yelled, his face turning red. But everyone present knew it was a lie. My brothers had already audited everything, from his bank history to his credit card statements. Robert, stop, I said, holding my grandmother's hand and looking down at him. You didn't just drain my savings, you blew through my trust fund. Didn't you? Hearing my question, Robert's face twisted. His eyes darted nervously for a second, but then, as if deciding to go for broke, he screamed, That was an investment for our family's future. That failure was just bad luck. I didn't make a mistake. An investment, you say? So the money you invested into designer bags for Lauren and trips to Europe with her was also just bad luck? Robert, looking like a cornered rat, panted heavily. It seemed his sanity had completely left him, and he suddenly let out a bizarre laugh. Haha. Yeah, I spent it all. This is your fault, Amy. For hiding your family and tricking me? If I had known you were the sterling heiress, I would have treated you differently. But you pretended to be a plain old woman and made a fool out of me. I remained silent. I was simply observing how he destroyed himself. Listen here, Amy. You can talk about divorce all you want, but it's useless. As long as that debt is in your name. You can never run away from me, Robert screamed triumphantly. At that moment, the air in the corridor froze. My brothers and my grandmother looked at him with an entirely new expression. Robert, what did you just say? My grandmother took a slow step forward. Just from that one step, the air seemed to vibrate. A debt in Amy's name? I can't believe my ears. I don't have any debt in my name. Robert apparently didn't realize what kind of lethal bomb he had just detonated. He proudly waved what he thought was his only trump card. Huh, you don't know, do you? 5 years ago, I took your personal information and took out a $5 million loan in your name. Supposedly to expand your activities as an artist. I forged your signature perfectly. The payments are already past due. Even if we divorce, this debt is going to stick to you for the rest of your life. Robert rolled around on the floor laughing. Now you're mine forever. What good is your family? What good is your arts guild? High society won't accept an heiress drowning in defaulted debt. What a cunning, vile betrayal. Using his wife's identity to saddle her with massive debt and blackmail her with it. But Robert had no idea who he had actually borrowed that money from. My eldest brother, William, pulled out his phone with a cold smirk. Robert, Sterling Financial Group. Where did you borrow that money? Doesn't that name ring a bell? S. Sterling? The laughter on Robert's face slowly warped into sheer terror. That is a private wealth management bank under our family's control. The fact that you fraudulently obtained a loan in Amy's name is fully documented. Which means the confession you just made wasn't just about infidelity or verbal abuse. It's an admission of wire fraud, identity theft, and grand larceny. What? Robert's mouth opened and closed like a fish. You thought you could trap Amy? When in reality, you just signed your own one-way ticket to federal prison. Before my brother could finish speaking, footsteps echoed around the bend of the corridor. It wasn't hotel security. Several men in sharp suits with professional, expressionless faces marched toward us. Robert, this is only the beginning, I said softly. Out of pure despair, Robert went limp and collapsed on the floor. But it still wasn't over. From Robert's pocket, something spilled out as he fell. Seeing it, Lauren let out the most piercing shriek of the night. No way. That's mine. On the floor lay evidence of Robert's most disgusting betrayal, one that even Lauren didn't know about. A small, high-tech digital voice recorder and a manila envelope rolled onto the carpet. Lauren lunged for them with a scream, but my brother beat her to it, stepping on the recorder with his shoe. No, Robert, don't. Lauren's face contorted in a completely different kind of terror than when her affair was exposed. What is this, Robert? Explain, William said, pressing the play button. In the silent corridor, an intimate conversation played out. Robert, are you really going to take me away from the DuPont family if I divorce my husband? Of course, Lauren, baby. That suffocating house isn't right for you. Come with me to a freer world. It was unmistakably Robert and Lauren's voices, but the real shock was yet to come. All right, Lauren, tell me again in detail. Where exactly does your husband hide his off-the-books ledgers? If we can get our hands on them, we can blackmail the DuPont family and get enough money to set us up for life. Understand? In the safe. In the master bedroom. In a hidden drawer. But make sure no one knows it was me. Don't worry, I'll protect you. The recording stopped, and an icy silence blanketed the hall. Robert. Lauren stared at him with a face like a ghost. You weren't with me out of love. From the very beginning, you were just trying to dig up dirt on the DuPont family? Robert, who had zero energy left to defend himself, panted and stared at the floor. But it still wasn't over. My younger brother picked up the contents of the envelope that fell with the recorder. Inside were several photographs and a contract. In the photos, Lauren was caught on camera with another young man. And the contract was an agreement between Robert and a private investigation firm to spy on Lauren. Robert, you were having Lauren followed too? My brother asked with disgust. Robert suddenly let out a manic laugh. You think a greedy bitch like her can be trusted? That was my insurance policy in case Lauren betrayed me. I planned to blackmail her and drain the DuPont family dry. Robert spat in Lauren's direction. Manipulating a stupid bimbo like you who thinks she's young and pretty is so easy. Love? Don't make me laugh. Your only value was your status as a DuPont daughter-in-law and the information you had. Lauren lost all her words, and with a dying whimper, her eyes rolled back and she passed out. Two people who had sworn eternal love and laughed at me, the idiot wife, had now fallen face first into their own greed and betrayal. I watched the scene without a single tear in absolute silence. Sickening to the point of nausea. Revolting, Eleanor DuPont said, her voice trembling. In her eyes wasn't just anger over her daughter-in-law's affair, but burning hatred for Robert, who tried to extort her family. Theodore, take this man and woman to the authorities immediately. Assemble all our corporate lawyers so they never see the light of day again. Understood, Mother. Theodore turned to Robert. What you attempted wasn't just an affair. It was corporate extortion and embezzlement. Prepare yourself. At Theodore's signal, the suited men waiting in the corridor stepped forward. No, let me go. Amy. Please. I was wrong. I'll tell you everything, Amy. Robert, grabbed by the arms, was dragged away, screaming pathetically. I didn't look away until his screams were cut off by the closing elevator doors. For 25 years, I tried to build a garden called a family, and this man poured the gasoline of his greed all over it and burned it to the ground. Amelia. My grandmother gently placed a hand on my shoulder. It is all over. Your 5-year trial is finished. But tell me, you haven't told that man everything yet, have you? My grandmother's sharp insight pulled me back. Yes, he hadn't yet grasped the sheer magnitude of what he had lost. He was panicking over losing money, status, and me. But he didn't realize the true depth of his fall. I stepped toward Robert's back as he was being dragged away. Robert, I want to say one last thing to you. Before the elevator doors closed, I spoke with the clearest, cruelest voice I had used in 25 years. Hearing it, Robert's face twisted with unimaginable despair. This was a truth that, no matter how much he regretted it, he could never undo. For the few seconds as the elevator doors slid shut, my words acted like sharp stakes driving into that inescapable, cramped box. Robert, that board of directors position you were so proud of. Did you ever wonder why that title fell to someone like you? Robert, restrained by the men, stared at me with bloodshot eyes. What? Because of my talent, of course. I worked myself to death to hit those targets. I smiled, cold and full of pity. No. 5 years ago, your firm was on the verge of bankruptcy due to a hostile takeover. And the one pulling the strings behind the scenes, becoming the majority shareholder, was my family. The Sterling Group. Ah, what? My grandmother wanted to pull the investment because of your sheer incompetence, but I begged her. I wanted my husband to believe in himself. I wanted him to shine just once. Your promotion was my own birthday present to myself, requested from my grandmother. All emotion vanished from Robert's face. The position that made him feel like a business genius, that let him yell at subordinates and degrade me as a useless parasite, turned out to be nothing but a toy, bought for a pathetic husband by the wife he abused. Liar, liar. Robert's scream was cut off as the doors clamped shut. That was my final blow, utterly destroying him as a man and as a person. The heavy elevator doors closed. Behind them, there was no longer the man I had called my husband for 25 years. Only the pathetic remains of a fallen soldier, crushed by his own arrogance. In the empty corridor, only the unconscious Lauren, the DuPont family, and my family remained. Amy, I don't know how to apologize to you, Eleanor DuPont said with a heavy sigh. On her face, the previous harshness was gone. There was only the bitterness of a mother and the guardian of a family's honor. Mrs. DuPont, please lift your head. You have no need to apologize. I gently held her hands. From you, I didn't just learn fine art, but the strength to live with dignity. It pains me that I had to hurt you this way. Amy, what a generous heart you have. Tears fell from Eleanor's eyes. But in the corner of the corridor was someone whose battle was not yet over. Lauren. She couldn't recover from the shock that Robert had used her, muttering to herself while pulling her own hair. Liar. Robert chose me because I'm younger and prettier. He said we were going to Europe, that he didn't need that old woman. Theodore slowly approached Lauren, who was refusing to accept reality. He quietly placed the digital recorder and the photos in front of her. Lauren, this is your invitation to your free world. Look closely. Theodore's voice was strangely detached. Robert even recorded your intimate encounters to blackmail the DuPont family. While you were swearing your love to him, he was only thinking of the most effective way to drain our accounts. And this. Look at this. Theodore threw the private investigator's report at her. Everything is in here. How you extorted money from male friends in college. How you got expelled. How, even after we were married, you kept younger boyfriends on the side. Robert knew from the start you would betray him. You two were the perfect match to use and betray each other. The light in Lauren's eyes died. Her youth and beauty, which she thought were her ultimate weapons, were nothing but disposable tools to Robert. Tomorrow you will be struck from the DuPont family trust. Your parents have already been contacted to come pick you up tonight. Theodore turned away, no longer looking at her. Very well, Amelia, my grandmother called to me softly. It has been a long time, 25 very long years. Will you ever forgive that man? Hearing my grandmother's question, I looked out the window. The nighttime cityscape from the hotel's high floors felt cold and beautiful. No, grandmother. Even forgiveness is too great an honor for him, I answered, my voice strangely calm. Hate and anger are also forms of attachment. Today, in this place, I will erase the 25 years I spent with him from my life as if they never happened. That is the only possible ending for me, I see. That is the true spirit of a Sterling. My grandmother smiled with satisfaction and squeezed my hand. The revenge drama was over, but this story still had one final act. How would two people who lost everything face harsh reality? And what new steps would I take? After gaining your freedom after 25 years, Amy, could you brew tea for us at my home tomorrow morning? Your true, perfect tea. Hearing Eleanor's words, I nodded deeply in silence. But at that moment, my phone rang with an ominous tone. On the screen wasn't Robert, who was already with the police, but a call from a completely unexpected place. Hello? Hearing the conversation, I was genuinely shocked for the first time that night. On my screen wasn't the police or a lawyer, but the head of the VIP client department from the largest bank in the country. With slightly trembling fingers, I pressed answer. Yes, Amelia Sterling speaking. I apologize for the late hour, miss. Sterling, the matter we discussed has been fully resolved. Hearing that flat but reassuring report, I felt the last remnants of anxiety leave my body. Thank you. Proceed as planned. After hanging up, I turned to my grandmother and nodded. Grandmother, it's completely finished. His final financial maneuver has also turned to dust. Excellent. Well then, let us go see their true despair. A few days later, in a grand corporate law office in Midtown Manhattan, sat Robert. He wasn't in handcuffs, but in a wrinkled suit, he looked 10 years older. Amy, please, I'm begging you. That $5 million debt. Do something. I'm going to be indicted for wire fraud. If you just say it was a joint decision, I'll be saved. Robert tried to reach for my hand across the mahogany table, but my brother sharply stopped him. I told you not to touch her. Robert, it seems you still don't understand anything. William threw a document onto the table. The $5 million you borrowed in Amy's name. The collateral was the luxury penthouse you thought was your hard-earned asset and all your stock portfolio. You didn't know, but the parent company of the bank you borrowed from is our family, the Sterlings. Ever since you tried to secure funds illegally, we've been monitoring everything. And this morning, when your fraud was confirmed, all collateral assets were seized. Your offshore accounts and your corporate severance have all been frozen. Robert's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Frozen? Meaning I don't have a single cent? Additionally, you're facing charges from your firm for embezzlement. Mr. Harrison is furious. All the luxury goods and trips you funded for Lauren under the guise of entertainment expenses, all of that was corporate theft. Robert finally buried his face in the table and sobbed. And regarding your parents' estate, which you tried to monopolize and blow on partying with Lauren, after proving the forgery of their will and the fact that you neglected them, the estate has been redirected to the Sterling Philanthropic Foundation. You truly have absolutely nothing left. When I said that, Robert shook his head like a madman. Lies, I don't believe it. Amy, you're my wife. Sweet Amy, who took care of me for 25 years. Let's start over. I'll change. We'll live quietly in the suburbs. I'll drink your coffee, Robert. I gave him the coldest stare of my life. What you need isn't me. What you need is the Sterling fortune and a free nurse. Unfortunately, the Amy you married 25 years ago died a little bit every day. I stood up and placed the final letter in front of him. This is the bill for 25 years of insults, neglect, and emotional trauma you inflicted on me, converted into a monetary value. On top of that debt, until you pay it all off, you will be hunted by the courts and debt collectors for the rest of your life. Even after you get out of federal prison. My. As his dying shrieks echoed through the law office, I walked out without looking back. In the corridor, I ran into the DuPont family coming out of another room. Lauren seemed to have just heard terms equivalent to a death sentence. Her appearance was vastly different from the hotel. Her luxury items had been seized. She was wearing cheap sweatpants. Her long acrylic nails were gone, her eyes empty like a doll. "Miss Amy," she called out with a hoarse voice. "What do I do now? I can't go home. I have no money. The DuPont family is suing me for millions. Where am I supposed to go?" "That is your decision," I answered coldly to the woman who tried to destroy my dignity. "That is the price of your arrogance, the price of believing that youth and beauty could manipulate people. For the rest of your life, you will carry the weight of the lives you've ruined. Go work on a construction site or as a janitor, whatever it takes. That is your only redemption." "No, I won't do it. I am a DuPont." Lauren screamed like a lunatic and started rolling on the floor. Of her former beauty, not a single trace remained. "How repulsive," Eleanor said, standing beside me. "Amy, let us go. There is no use lingering in this filthy place." Accompanied by the screams of two people burning in hell, we stepped out onto the street. The sky was a piercing blue. For 25 years I had lived under this sky, but I had never realized how high and bright it was. "Amy, my brothers called me to the waiting town car. Grandmother is waiting at the estate. Today we celebrate your new beginning." I stopped and looked up at the sky. The prison called a family. The prison called a husband. All of it was now shattered. Freedom. My true self rediscovered at the age of 52. Yes, let's go. I got into the car with a newfound resolve. This was no longer the life of a dependent wife. This was the beginning of a new chapter for a woman standing tall on her own 2 feet, as an individual, and as the heiress to the Sterling legacy. But through the car window, I saw an incredible sight. It was destiny's final, greatest gift. The contrast was so ironic and clear. From the exit of the building, security guards tossed Robert and Lauren out onto the sidewalk. Robert, in scuffed, dirty shoes, desperately tried to hail a cab, but no one stopped for his disheveled figure. Beside him, on a giant digital billboard in Times Square, an advertisement played for the Sterling Fine Arts Foundation. A new chapter by Amelia Vanderbilt. Sterling, Tradition Towards the Future. On the screen was me, wearing high-end couture, with a clear gaze looking straight ahead. Pedestrians stopped to admire. So beautiful. What an elegant woman. Robert stared up at the screen, oblivious to the fact that the woman he was looking at was currently gliding by in a black limousine. He fell to his knees in utter despair. He had tried so desperately to hold on to the closest treasure to him, the one he had so foolishly abused. "Goodbye, Robert. My long 25-year game is over," I said in my heart, and never looked back again. A few hours later, in the quiet woods of the Hamptons, at the main estate of the Sterling family, inside a room filled with majestic tranquility, the only sounds were the crackling of the hearth and the rustling wind. I calmly and wholeheartedly brewed tea. This was not the coffee I brewed for 25 years in a dark kitchen under a rain of insults. This was tea brewed to reclaim my pride and self-love. Across from me sat my grandmother and Eleanor DuPont. "Please." I gently served the cups. Eleanor took her cup with trembling hands. After taking a sip, she couldn't stop the tears that fell into her lap. Ah, a tea so deep, strong, and warm. I have never tasted anything like this in my life. "Amy, this is your true soul. Thank you. Thank you, Eleanor. Now I understand that those 25 years were necessary just for this one cup of tea." My grandmother also finished her tea and narrowed her eyes in satisfaction. "Amelia, your suffering was not in vain. Like a lotus growing in the mud, yet blooming into a pure flower, you have become stronger. Starting tomorrow, you will take the helm of the Sterling family. In your words, in your actions, there now lives wisdom and compassion for the suffering of others." "Yes, grandmother. I accept this mandate with honor." I bowed deeply. There was no more need to walk on eggshells around anyone's moods. No one would ever call me useless and wound my soul again. I would live as myself. A few months passed. Robert was found guilty of wire fraud, identity theft, and grand larceny. From federal prison, he wrote letters every day, begging for forgiveness and asking to start over. But I threw them away without opening them. In my life, there was not a single second left for him. Lauren, burdened by massive debt to the DuPont family and cast out by her own, completely lost her place in life. Rumor had it she was working at a factory in a remote rural town, hiding her former beauty and paying off her debt day by day. Her naive belief that youth and beauty would excuse her forever had permanently closed off her future. Theodore, conversely, threw his heart into rebuilding the DuPont family business and started a new path alongside Eleanor. In a letter from him, he wrote, "Now, I will search for a woman with inner strength like yours, Miss Amy. Good morning, Miss Amelia. Ready for today's lesson? Every morning, I am surrounded by the voices of my students, and I begin a new day. Women come to my studio who, like I once did, suffer in their families or workplaces. I teach them not only art but the ability to value themselves. In the late afternoon, I sit alone on the veranda, looking out at the autumn garden. I look at my hands. Fingers that were once rough from hard labor now gracefully and beautifully hold a paintbrush. The 25 years of darkness were necessary, so that the light now surrounding me would be so precious. All right, tomorrow I will paint again." I stood up and looked up at the clear night sky. Up there, shining with its own brilliant light, ignited a bright, brand new star.